Well, it's a pleasure to be back here in San Francisco. I was in the neighborhood last fall, and so I took the obligatory tourist photos of the Golden Gate, Alcatraz, Fisherman's Wharf, and the great technologies we have on the ISS. I was able to get all those in one picture. It really is amazing to see the places where you are from space, only 250 miles away. Have we got any folks in here from Ames in town? Did they make it up the road, make it through the traffic? All right. You guys look pretty good from orbit as well. You can see the runways right there, Moffett Field, and all the facilities you work at. We appreciate your work up in this area. Now, if you guys will indulge me, I know there's a lot of you that were here yesterday at the luncheon, but if you look around, there's a lot of future researchers, rocket scientists, and space explorers that are here with us today. And so, if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of slant my remarks more towards them. And so I apologize in advance for any similarities you might see from yesterday to today. So for all the young people out there, I grew up just south of here, and I was just like you. I grew up in Santa Monica, California. This is, if you look to the stage right, here's Los Angeles International Airport and little Santa Monica Airport. And went to school in SoCal. I wore shorts all winter long, just like most of you probably do. And I never thought at all that someday this might be possible. This might be what I'm doing. It was something that was fascinating, but I never thought was really possible. And so the first thing I'll leave you guys with for all the young people is that the limitations you have, the only ones that you have, are the ones that you place on yourself. And you'll never get to be able to do something if you say, I can't do this. And so please, eradicate that from your vocabulary at this juncture, especially, yesterday I got to spend time with the Genes and Space kids. And I think my IQ is about half of any one of them. And so there's certainly a very, bright future for all of them. And so I, became a test pilot for the Marine Corps flying F-18s. I became a test pilot flying everything I could get my hands on. I just loved it. I was just passionate about that. And I enjoyed every opportunity I had, but unfortunately, none of those vehicles ever could get up to orbital velocity. So I became an astronaut. And certainly, things like this were things that had inspired me as a young person, and it inspired me. Here we are, just over 49 years ago, we put the first humans on the moon. And as a young person growing up watching this, I thought, now these people are amazing. Look at what we did. And these astronauts, they were like, as common as unicorns. They were like these mythical creatures. And then, I become an astronaut myself, and my wife reminds me that, no, you're not a mythical creature. You're just a regular guy. And it's true. Astronauts are ordinary people who just get the opportunity to do extraordinary things. And for all the young people here, look around at the professionals and the people that are here for the conference, for their job. It's the thanks to them and the people that they represent that we have the ability to do these extraordinary things. Now, one of the extraordinary things that an average guy like me gets to do is something you don't typically think of, but it turns out that when you're in space, you can put your pants on, not one leg at a time, but two legs at a time. And so I got an opportunity to fly on a shuttle, 2009. You talk about really going on to new frontiers. The space shuttle opened that up, the reusable vehicle that allowed us to go up to the space station, finish its construction. And here we are with the space station, what will arguably be the greatest achievement of humankind, because look at our engineering, planning, our manufacturing capabilities, the quality assurance, the fact that all these pieces were never fit checked here on Earth. We sent them up to the vacuum of space, put them together, and guess what? We've got a space station that's been now up there for 20 years and continuously manned for the last 18. So all the young people here that are in high school, there's never been a day of your life where there's not been a human in space. It's completely normal for you, which is awesome. So it's the size of a football field. Inside, it's like the size of a 5-bedroom house. It goes around the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour. And we have the opportunity to have it operate in the sunlight at about plus 270 degrees, and in the shade where it's minus 270, the most extreme environment that we send humans to. So one of the questions we always ask is, how do we prepare the humans to go into this extreme environment? And so, as was mentioned before, we use the cave environment with our partners at ESA, And we'll actually go into the caves in Sardinia, Italy, and we'll live underground. What's great is that it's such an extreme environment where we can do science, learn more about our crewmates, stressors on yourself, but how you adapt to an environment that's always dark. And there's no sunlight, and so there's no sunrise, there's no sunset. You don't never know what time it is. You also have the same constant humidity, which, with the not knowing the time, constant humidity, these are all things that happen on the space station. So it's a really good preparation for being on the space station. And it's such a unique environment. We talked about it being dark. Well, it doesn't look so dark in the pictures, but if you notice in the pictures, all the crew members, their backs are towards the camera because everybody's holding a flash. And we yell that we're opening up the aperture. Everybody flashes their flash all around the room so that hopefully we can paint, with our light and to see what the picture looks like once we have it on the camera. And we'll also go to the extreme environment underwater. At the Aquarius habitat off the coast of Key Largo is the only habitat in the world where human beings can go and live underwater. It's also the place where it's like the size of a school bus inside, and we have 6 people living and working for weeks at a time, doing simulated spacewalks, going in and out of the wet porch with hard hats. And so we're able to work on the communications delay and simulate what it's like to be on Mars. We're able to go and figure out how to do science where we were in, again, like the cave, a dangerous environment, where safety when we're underwater isn't just going to the surface because you're doing saturation diving, and that'll kill you if you end up going to the surface. You have to rely on your buddy and your train to get back inside. And so the hope is that by taking people and putting them in these extreme environments on Earth, then when we get to space, which is the ultimate extreme environment, physiologically, psychologically, then you're a little bit closer to it not being such an overwhelming experience when you first get there, and you're able to get to work right away. Now, we'll do extreme environment training in Russia as part of our space station training by going and doing our winter survival. For us, it's in January, it's a warm winter, so it's only like -10. And we have only the equipment that's inside our little tiny Soyuz spacecraft. And so we have to survive for 2 nights and 3 days out there in it. And we also do a water survival, so we end up having to do an emergency landing anywhere on the planet, anytime during our mission, we can safely get out of that as well. The problem is, the Soyuz is only this big, and my arms are a little bent inside. And so imagine, 3 of you adults inside this tiny spacecraft in a pressure suit. Well, everybody has to get out of their pressure suits, get into all that survival equipment, including the dry suit over top of it when we are doing the water survival, and then they allow us to open the hatch and get out. So you're basically getting out of your little seat, getting on top of your 2 crewmates. They have to help you, take things off because it's too small to do any of that. And so we talk about pioneering, new types of extremes. Well, you learn things about your crewmates during this part that you really, hopefully, hope to forget someday. But we also do a lot of training to be able to be ready for anything, whether it is emergency training, whether it's any type of medical emergency where we'd stabilize a patient to be able to get them back to Earth. We do robotics training to figure out how to capture the robotically the visiting vehicles that we have that come up and visit us. And then we have to do a lot of spacewalk training so that we can go ahead and fix anything outside on the space station that needs to be repaired. And so we have the same suits that we wear out for spacewalks, and we put them in underwater. We weigh them down so they're neither floating to the surface or sinking to the bottom. And we attach all the same tools that we're going to use during the spacewalks. So we inflate these suits to the same pressure that we're going to use outside, which is 4.2 pounds of pressure above the ambient. And so we go underwater, and we actually have an entire space station in the world's largest swimming pool called the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory in Houston. It's got 6 million gallons of water. It's about 60 feet wide, 40 feet deep, and we have the entire space station there. And so the whole point of the training is that when we go outside, we're in the same suits, we use the same tools, we reach for the same handrails, the same cabling, and it gives us the most highest fidelity training that we can get until we actually go out the door in space. The training finally ends, and one of the neat traditions when we're flying with our Russian partners is that when you pass your exams in Star City, Russia, at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center, then we go down to Red Square. So this is St. Basil's Cathedral in the heart of Red Square in the middle of Moscow. And the tradition is that we go and lay flowers at the grave sites on the Kremlin wall of the Russian space heroes, Sergei Korolev and Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space. And when you think about this day and age, where what you see in the news here or there, the biggest, longest lasting testament of the space station is the fact that we can all work together to make the space station work through the partnership. And that IGA works. And the briefing you heard this morning about the Deep Space Gateway and the international partnership continuing out beyond low Earth orbit, that's a testament to the work that the people are doing right now and have been doing the last 20 years, 30 years as we got station up and running and being operated. Certainly for us, the crew members, our biggest heroes are right there on the screen with us, our spouses. All of us had kids. My wife works full-time at JSC, and they took care of everything and allowed Sergei, Paolo, and I the opportunity to be able to go execute our mission aboard the space station. So they were the real heroes of Expedition 52 and 53. Now, all that training takes place in Moscow, but we have to fly down to Kazakhstan, where it's nice and flat desert. And we go into quarantine with our backup crew. And we do fit checks on our vehicle. Now we're finally in our flight suits. We're actually getting ready to see where the equipment is in our real vehicle to know what we're going to unpack as soon as we get to orbit and be ready to go. And then they put a shroud on it to protect it as it goes through the thick parts of the atmosphere. They attach it to the Soyuz rocket, and then they put it on a rail car and roll it out horizontally to the launch pad. The amazing thing is, and think about the engineering that goes behind taking a rocket that's horizontal, putting it into the vertical, and as you can see, look at all the rocket engines that the Soyuz has, and this right up here, just inches, the clearance between the silo and the rocket itself. But they've been doing it for years and decades, and it fits every time. It's actually the same exact launch pad that Yuri Gagarin launched out of. It's the same one that we did. This Saturday will be the 1-year anniversary. It was July 28th last year that we launched. We say goodbye to our families across the glass because we're still in quarantine. And then this guy came up, and if I understood him correctly, I think he said, "Hey, you better be at the ISSRDC conference next July or don't come home." And so, of course, I said, "You got it, boss. I'll be there." And then they pack us in the Soyuz. And remember I talked about trying to change out of these pressure suits? We are in there with all our equipment, and it's pretty tight. And if you notice under the hatch, which is in the bottom center of the picture, that's where all our legs kind of meet. So we're kind of like pieces of pie sitting in the box. And this is what it looks like from the other point of view. You can see our feet are inches from each other, and our heels are inches from our buttocks. And I don't know if any guys have ever been in that position, but it's not a real comfortable thing for hours at a time. So when I got back from space, I was never going to complain about economy class seating again. And thank you to all our commercial providers for having Economy Plus plans in all of your vehicles. We greatly appreciate that. And so then, the launch started, and our families are sitting there watching, and everybody's, seeing the rocket launch. And Paolo and I lean over at the same time to Sergei, our commander, in the middle, and we're like, "Hey, have we even left the ground?" It was so smooth compared to shuttle because we didn't have the solid rocket motors light off. It was really a very pleasant, smooth experience, and really kind of surprising, a nice introduction to getting up to orbit. And so, as you look at the video of us going uphill, you can see us reaching the upper levels of the atmosphere as we're getting higher and higher, the plumes spreading out as the air molecules are getting farther and farther apart. And you can see these white things. Oh, excuse me. You can see these. Go back. All right, never mind. Here we go. You can see these white things up here. Those are the 4 first-stage engines that have come off, and they're floating back down to the Earth, reflecting in the sunlight. And that's known as the Korolev cross, as it makes kind of a cross shape as they float back down. And so then we are 4 orbits later. We are at the space station, and that's only 6 hours after we have launched. We are docking to the space station. That's amazing. We got from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour and docked with this huge football-sized vehicle up called the space station in just that amount of time. And for us on our launch day, it ended up being about 23 hours after we had woken up that day is when we finally are done docking, opening the hatch, and able to get inside after a very, very long day. And we joined the Expedition 52 crew. We had Jack Fisher, Fyodor Yurchikhin, and Peggy Whitson. And so for all our young female future space explorers, Peggy Whitson came home in September with a new US record. 665 total days in space is what she had, surpassing everybody else. Not a female record, a US record. And so we're expecting that's going to last for a long time. Unfortunately, we only had about 5 weeks with these guys before they left. And so all of a sudden they hand over the keys to the car, and we started Expedition 53. So we had our Space Hawaiian shirts. We were joined by Mark Vandehei, who some of you heard from yesterday, Sasha Mashurkin, a Russian fighter pilot, and Joe Akaba, former Marine, former school teacher, who got selected as an astronaut in my class in 2004. And certainly the neat thing about Space Station is that the floor and the ceiling are suddenly useful areas. And so the volume inside seems a lot bigger when you get up there, because you could be working on any surface within the station. Obviously, you're here for the conference, you're hearing about the research development. We're there to do the science. And it's science that is, it's chemistry, it's biochemistry, it's biomedical, it's, fluid science, it's combustion research. It's astounding the plethora of different things we're doing. The mini PCRs we're using to sequence DNA. And then also all the huge amount of research to take the human body and figure out how it survives in the weightlessness environment, and how we can go ahead and make that so we can do long journeys from here on out. Joe Akaba growing our lettuce up there. I mean, until you spend months up in a little tin can smelling 5 other guys, you don't realize that lettuce has a very pleasant smell. Normally, when you go to the grocery store, you smell the lemons and the oranges, and the lettuce just gets lost. But when it's the only thing you got, it smells really, really good. And one of the neat things, especially for the students, is we got these things called spheres. You guys, students, are programming these things and flying them around in weightlessness, and we're there to operate and make sure the batteries are charged and the nitrogen jets have enough juice. But you guys are the ones that are doing this. This is real stuff that students are involved in on Space Station. Another one of my other, favorite experiments of the 250 plus that we did and were involved with was this lung tissue that we were growing that is supposed to have the ability to help them figure out how to have cancer-targeting cells. Heat-seeking or cancer-seeking missiles, as Two Fish called it. Very direct applications to taking the zero-G laboratory and bringing it down and helping people back here on Earth. So one of my favorites. We also do a lot of work to stay in shape, because the human body degrades without the tension of our muscles, keeping our bone strength. And so we end up running on a treadmill. And so we have a harness and bungee cords that hold us down, otherwise we'd just float off every time our foot hit, and we run on the wall of Space Station. So when you look at this picture of Sasha, he's on the treadmill, but look behind him, there's Sergei, 180 out, so opposite walls, they're working out on the Space Station. So you can imagine if you had a program manager, you're the engineer, and he comes and says, I want you to build a piece of equipment so the crew can work out in weightlessness, but it needs to be resistive, okay? And, oh, by the way, it has to be able to work out the entire body. And, oh, by the way, we're doing all this science on Space Station, so it can't impart any vibrations or loads or jostles on the Space Station because it ruins it. As you can see how the ARED machine is on its own vibration isolation system, allows us to work out every single bit of our body, and majority of us are actually coming back stronger than before we ever went up into space. And so it ends up being a really good countermeasure for the weightlessness environment. The cargo vehicles that come up, thank you to all our commercial providers. They bring up all the science, bringing up our food, bringing up our clothing, bringing up care packages from home, and we grab it with our robotic arm, we execute all the science that's on board. Some of them we're able to offload trash and have them burn up in the atmosphere. The other ones, the Dragon is the one that's able to come back and bring our science back to Earth. And also our Progress. The only one we didn't see during our increment was the HTB. And we also had to do spacewalks to do repairs outside. The spacewalks are one of the more taxing things that we do. It takes a lot of effort, and we can't really clear off the schedule for all the crew to be able to get it done. But right here you see Mark Vandehei on the very bottom of the space station coming out during his first EVA. 250 miles of nothing once you come out that airlock on the bottom of the space station. And as you can imagine, just thinking about it, being able to have to come out that hatch, this was a GoPro I had on, it doesn't matter if it's your first or your fifth, your body naturally reacts, and those blood vessels tighten, your muscles constrict, and if we all went up to the 39th floor of the view here, and there was a ledge we could kind of lean over, you would have that, that feeling of what it's like to go on a spacewalk. It's a few hundred times more intense. We got to rely on the training. We have that great facility in the neutral buoyancy lab, and we go in there, we practice time over time. Here's where my hands go. Here's where my tethers go. Here's where my buddy's going to be. Here's where my equipment is, and you're able to go ahead and get to work because you planned and practiced and worked on it so much. This is Mark on his first spacewalk working on a camera, and you can see at the bottom he's actually riding the robotic arm. And it was really neat to have Paolo fly the robotic arm, and Sergey took this picture the same time I took the previous picture, and you can see Mark right up here. Look how tiny he is. There's a robotic arm that Paolo was flying. That's just half of space station. That's the left half. And see how small we are. It's just massive, amazing testament to engineering and our international partnership to have this thing up there working. There's a whole mirroring side of space station off the right side of the picture you're not able to see. And so, it's very rare to have a moment just to kind of look out, but this gives you an idea of how fast the Earth is turning underneath us. We're going 5 miles every second. And certainly, the Earth is not flat. Hopefully, this will prove it to everybody. And here's Mark working. You can see how everything's floating around. It's really an exhausting day. But it's also rewarding. We were able to go ahead and replace the latching end effectors on the robotic arm and put that back into a serviceable mode. But the spacewalks nowadays are typically 6 to 7 hours. The reality is you're getting into the suit, you're closing it up, you're doing leak checks, you're doing a in-suit exercise to get the nitrogen down to your body. And then you get your tools put on, then you get put in the airlock with all the bags you're going to do the equipment work with, depressurize it, do the spacewalk, repressurize the airlock when you're done, then get out of your suit. And typically we're about 11 and a half hours in that suit for a spacewalk. And all we have is about 3/4 of a liter of water in a bag in front of us with a straw. There's no food, there's no Powerade, there's no energy drink. And so it's one of those things that's why we practice on Earth in the pool doing the same thing, so we can be able to have the stamina to execute these spacewalks. Now, certainly one of the other parts of our job, as you heard, is we're able to actually do outreach and speak with people and share the message of what humankind's doing in low Earth orbit. We had the opportunity to speak with Pope Francis, and I know that it's a big challenge right now for the ISS to be take the international partnership in a commercialization era and transition over. And so we figured you guys probably needed some help. So last month when we were in Italy, we went by and went to the top to try to get you guys some help, and we gave Pope Francis his own flight suit with an Argentinian flag and the mantle with the Pope's crest on it. And so I'm hopeful. I know there's some Sierra Nevada folks here. Hopefully you guys maybe can modify your vehicle and have a space Pope mobile at some point, because I think he's interested. And we also do a lot of outreach with students, and that's the fun part, because what's the point of us doing our work for those of us that are wearing the suits of any flavor or involved in industry if we don't have the young people that are interested in studying the STEM fields and interested in coming up and taking our place and carrying on the mission further. This was one young lad who had a great question.
Hi, Wendy. I'm Skylar. Can you do a one-finger push-up? Can you show us?
All right, Skylar, we'll go ahead and show you what we can do up here, and I'll have Astronaut Joe tell you what I'm doing.
May not have a whole lot of experience sequencing genes, but as a Marine, I have plenty of experience doing push-ups, so I was uniquely qualified for this.
So he's doing the regular two-handed push-ups like you guys would do down there. Oh, he's getting strong. He can do one arm. Can you do one arm? One finger. I see it. No hands. So yes, to answer your question, yes, you can. It is fun to be up here.
And you see ordinary people doing extraordinary things in space, and being able to show kids that maybe the floor isn't always the floor and the ceiling isn't always the ceiling. It just depends on your point of view. And so we really enjoy being able to do that. You know, you saw our Space and Wines. We had an Aloha Friday things where we would do that. And you can see our mission control team joining in and connecting with the mission, wearing their Hawaiian shirts on an Aloha Friday. But for those that are not in the industry, especially you young people, this is just one shift of 3 that are in the mission control 24 hours a day, keeping the space station running. They're the ones that run the space station. We just operate stuff on board, and they keep us safe, especially while we're sleeping. But behind them, there's also, for all the disciplines, whether it's the IT folks or the folks that take care of our life support system or the folks that keep the lights on, our medical doctors, the Capcom, the flight director, all those people have back rooms of engineers who are looking at the even more detailed data. And then we have engineering rooms that are looking and ready on standby in case something goes wrong. And those folks only represent a small amount of the tens of thousands of people across this country and around the world, because there's mission control centers in Germany, in Japan, in Huntsville, and in Russia that are all doing the same thing. And the astronauts are just the really teeny tiny part of it that's the visible part, but we're just a teeny tiny part of it, and we couldn't do any of the work that we do on orbit without them. And so we're very appreciative of all the folks that make it possible for us to be able to, finally turn that wrench or put the fixer in the experiment or whatever it is on orbit, because their work is the work that allows us to do this stuff in space. We're working and living in the same place. And so, that gets a little tiring after a while. So we had a tradition where every Friday night we go down to the Russian segment. This is the service module. And our Russian crewmates would make dinner. We'd eat the Russian food and have the Russian drink and be able to get a break from our normal work day. And then on Saturdays, they would all come down and we'd be in the US segment and we'd have dinner down there. This is actually our Thanksgiving meal. And you know that because we got our candlelit dinner up here that we printed out on our printer. But we've got our freeze-dried food. We've got canned food. We've got our fresh lettuce that we had grown. And it's really great to be able to talk about what we were doing on station, but also, hey, what's going on at home? How are you doing personally? How, wasn't just people getting holed up in their crew quarters and spending time by themselves. We also had an opportunity to get some pizza up there. And so it was sent up, and we ended up making our own pizzas. And you see all the white stuff on the table. That's duct tape that's been turned around, and Velcro that allows us to stick things like the sauce and everything on it. But as you can see, you let something go in space, and it just has a mind of its own. You've imparted a little force on it, and it starts floating away. There's our suitcase food warmer.